Welcome to Vivid Dreams, y'all. This vivid dream today is going to be about a hiking son and father that's experienced, but when they go to take this trail is a death trap. The dream that his father is going to have is going to come to reality. So if you are into these type of stories, as you know I'm new to telling them, please smash the subscribe button because it really helps my channel. And I want you to eat in front of the like button until it gets really mad and jumps over onto your plate and try to take your food, and I want you to smash the like button right on your plate. And make sure y'all keep that notification bell on so y'all don't miss any of my 3 to 4 weekly episodes. All right, let's get into this vivid dream. This dream starts out with a father and a son who used to go to different hiking trails and stuff, and they was really experienced hikers, and they said eventually they was going to go to this one trail where not a lot of people can get across this trail. So they packed their bags one week and they jumped in the car and they drove down and they barreled down the street until they got to the destination. They looked at the mountain and it was beautiful. It was everything they imagined, but what they didn't know is how treacherous these mountains was known for storms. So they pack, they go on a little thing and they talk to people, and you know, a lot of other hikers there that was talking about they was going to hit the trails, but they wasn't going all the way up. And there's a little pit stop that's right in the middle of the mountain where they probably stop off there and wait for the weather to pass. The father and son was so experienced, they said, I think we're going to take this hike and we're not going to wait for the storm. We're just going to keep going. It all started off as a beautiful walk. And they was walking, they were talking and just catching up on good old times of other hikes they did and trying to compare it with the hike they were on and talking about how people was sizing it and, you know, this hike is not all they talked it up to be, and, you know, just speaking basically in general about this hike. Well, as time persists and they keep talking about the hike and stuff, it would start getting a little incline and you'll see the tiredness and the fatigue start kicking in because they've been walking for hours at this point. And there's other hikers walking and they talking, they doing the same and stuff. But eventually, as they walking and stuff, they would start noticing that the people was veering off and they were starting to go towards this duckout, I guess you want to call it a duckout, like hideaway bar or something, just the place that they were supposed to be at until the weather had passed. So the father and son, they thought about it, and people was out there convincing them. Other hikers were saying, please, don't take this hike. Don't keep going. Y'all should just come on back, wait till the storm passes, and then you have a good time, and you can continue your hike. I'm not telling you not to go all the way to the top or anything like that, but please just wait for this weather. Please wait for it to pass. The father looked at the son. The son was like, Dad, we probably should. Now, mind you, the son is not young. He's a good 19, 20 years old, and he's like, Dad, I'm kind of second guessing this too. I mean, it's a lot of people saying we shouldn't go. And the one other guy that was over prepared, he actually said, I'm not even going to go. But the father insists, he says, nah, we got this, son. Come on now. This will be good bonding time for us, and we can get out there, and if it gets worse come to case scenario, we'll camp out somewhere. But what they didn't know is that this storm that was coming was one of the hardest storms, and it would actually make history. But we're going to get into what storm that was in a second. Back on the ranch, the father and them go ahead and starts veering off and continuing. But the guy did leave him one last note. He said, look, if you run into the big crystal looking rock, then you know you are on the right trail. You'll keep going that way and you'll make it to another point where it's another barn stuff, and that's the top, and it has a view spot and a camera thing you can see out the window. You get a nice view of everything around you. But you got to make sure you see that rock. Don't get it confused, because there's another rock that's off to the right, and that one will lead you in the wrong direction. So the father and son proceeded to start walking. They said, thank you for your advice, and we'll take that under consideration. Once the father and son left and they started hiking this trail and they started walking, as they were walking, they see the clouds start coming in, and they can see the mountains from a distance is turning very white. So they know it don't have much time before the day ends. You know what I mean? It's starting to get dark, and they see the moon coming out now, and they noticing that everything is starting to slowly drift downhill. And not only that, it's starting to get chilly and the wind is picking up. But not no normal wind. By the time they were walking for about another hour or so, the wind got so strong and the hill got so steep, and he like, we almost there, and they struggling and they trying to get through it, and then eventually the son said, Dad, I'm sorry, I just can't do it no more. Now mind you, they got to a level part of this mountain where it straightens out, so they know they on the right path. They already seen the big rock, and they got the big rock correct and everything, so they was on the right path. And they couldn't see, the visibility was so low, and they struggling, and he's straining, and he covering his eyes and trying to do everything to get there. And he said, come on, son, we just a little further. But when he looked back, he already could tell that his son had laid down. And he said, Dad, I'm sorry, I'm done. So his father knew he couldn't convince his son to go anymore. His son was burnt out, and he's like, you know what? He's seen his son, he's like, we could just stay here. I'm gonna walk a little more ways up just to see, but if not, I'll come back and we can stay here. So the father walked a little more ways up, and then he came back. The son had his tent thing set up and his sleeping bag. So the father didn't want to really get right up beside him. So the father kind of gave him some space, and then he set his tent and stuff up in his camping site, and he would camp right there. And they both would go to sleep. In the father's sleep, he will realize that he's having a vivid dream. And in this dream, he hears noises, and there's screaming in the background, and there's screeching noises, and then he hears a help, and he also hears something like wreckage noises, and sound like something scratching something, and something ripping tents apart. And he just had this really bad dream. I mean, to the point where it was so cold outside stuff, but he even broke a sweat in his sleep because his dream was so realistic. And he'll wake up, and he just pop up out of his dream, and he's look around, and he says, he look out the tent to check on his son, and he sees his son's tent is still right there. From what he could see, the visibility was pretty low, but he's like, okay, I'm just gonna tax it off, and I'm gonna go back to sleep. So once he lays down and he's back sound asleep, eventually the morning time will come, and the sun will come up, the storm is past, and he'll get out of his tent and look around. He'll see his son's tent, and now he can see it clear. And what he saw was, last night he did see the tent thing sticking up, but that campsite was totally torn apart. The storms had came in so strong that it practically ripped that tent apart. So he ran over there to see if his son was there, and his son was nowhere. So he maybe thought his son went off to the bathroom, and then it struck him. If my son's tent is this messed up, why isn't mine? Now he got worried, so he said, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave everything the way it is just in case he comes back, and I'm gonna run up to this place and get help. What he didn't know is, once he started trying to run to find this place, him and his son was only less than a quarter mile from the place. Had they kept walking for just 10 more minutes, they would have reached that place. On the other note, the largest search in history will go out. You talking military, you talking Air Force, police, rangers, hikers, to go out and look for this son. And no one ever found him. His son was completely gone. His son never returned to the campsite. And now in 2023, up to this day, this man still wonders what had happened and where is his son. Several years ago, a guy named Chris was a hard-working guy. He would go up and get up every day, go to work. He'd work about 16, 17 hours a day, and then he'll come home for a couple of hours and maybe get a nap in. But eventually, over time, that started taking a toll on his body. So he'd go to the doctors, and they'd tell him he's not getting the adequate rest. And he did take that under consideration, because he went home and he requested a week off of work. And while he was off work, he said he was going to rest up, maybe go play some golf or catch up with some friends and kind of do regular life stuff. But what he didn't know is he was so tired that once he laid down that night, he kind of went to sleep and had a dream. but not just any regular dream. His dream turned out to start off weird, because on day one of his dream, mind you, he took a week off, it only showed this dark man shadow figure just looking at him. Now in this dream, the guy didn't move or anything, he just stood there and he looked. And then all of a sudden, he starts moving towards him. But every time he moved towards him, Chris will wake up out of his sleep. And then he was starting the day, he was sweating. And then he'd go tell people about this dream. And he'd say, man, I'm having these weird dreams. And I don't get it. It's like, he said, it's like a guy and he's just standing in the dark. And then he comes towards me. And then I wake up. And then he was like, I don't understand what's going on. But, day one, he tacks it off. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go back to my regular life. And he go back to his regular lifestyle. And day two, he'll go out and have his little dinner and cook dinner and chill and, pretty much live a regular day. But when he went to sleep that night, the same man would reappear in his dream. In this round, that man wasn't as far back, but he was a lot closer. And he revealed the knife from behind his back. And he looked at him and said, your time is coming. And then Chris woke up. This would go on to happen 3 more times. And every night when Chris would go to sleep, this guy with this knife would get closer and closer, to the point where on the second to the last day, he would actually take the knife and take a swing at Chris. And Chris would move out of the way, and then he'll wake up. But when he woke up, he looked around and he says, I don't get it. What was that? So he would go around and he would seek help, and he tried everything he could do. But at this point, these dreams was getting so scary, he was unable to sleep. So he requested another week off work. But through that whole entire following week, one time he would go have sleep, and this guy would come out of his dream and try to stab him, and he'd miss. And then Chris would wake up, and then the following day, the guy would come out of the dream, try to stab him, he'd miss. But everything was okay because Chris was still alright, but Chris was trying to figure out why he keep having dreams of the same man, until the very last day of his vacation, where he knew he had to go back to work, and he's like, maybe I'm better off not sleeping, because the second to the last day, when the guy tried to stab him, he looked at him, pulled out a gun, and he told Chris, tomorrow, I'm going to kill you. For sure. And he didn't do anything. Chris woke up. What gets creepy is now Chris goes around and he's panicking. He's going to every hospital. He goes sees a doctor. He goes see a psychiatrist, and everyone's telling him the same thing. You could take this for it, or you could take that for it, but there's not really much we can give you for this, because you're coming to us talking about a dream, which means that it's in your sleep. So there's not really much we can do. It's just a dream. So just go home, try to think of different things throughout the day, and then when you go to sleep that night, you'll get a good night's rest, and then we can come back and discuss this tomorrow. But as Chris would plead with him, please, there is no tomorrow. This guy is going to kill me tonight. But like the doctor said once before, the doctor would turn around and tell him again, there's nothing we can do. You just have to sleep it off and come back tomorrow. And he said, I don't want to sleep. That's the problem. But ultimately, there wasn't nothing they can do. In fact, the time would go past, doctor's offices started closing. He even tried to stay up at a hospital just so he don't go to sleep that night. But eventually, he ended up going home and he dozed off on his couch. And where he dozed off at. Now, there's a lot of theories behind this. I'm going to tell you my theory, and then you guys can drop a comment on what you guys think the theory is. But ultimately, Chris would not wake up the next day. Now, he did tell us about the whole thing in his dream, that this guy was going to come back with a gun, and he said he was going to kill him. So apparently he must have been shot in his dream, because when they did an autopsy, there was a bruise mark dead center in his chest. But there was no hole, no entry wound or nothing. But the cause of death was he died in his sleep. So no one knows up to this day. We never talked to a dead man before, so no one knows what really happened on the last day in his sleep. But we all could assume that yes, whoever that was in his dream definitely came back to hunt him. So in 1996, there were 3 boys: Tony, O'Neal, and James. James and Tony decided that they would go outside and play. It was their first day in a new neighborhood. They didn't know anybody, and the neighborhood seemed relatively clean and good. So they figured, hey, they talked to their parents, and then the parents said, okay, Tony, okay, James, just make sure you guys are in by a certain time. So Tony and James would proceed to go play outside. So they played outside and all was going good and everything was going well. And then before you knew it, a guy in the apartment building, he's in a confrontation with some other guy, where the guy will pull out a knife and stab the guy 6 times. After the knife was dropped, the guy will turn and start running directly towards James and directly towards Tony. But the guy didn't come towards Tony and James or nothing like that. He didn't do nothing violent, and he kind of turned off. But that night will change everything, because the next day he'll wake up with all sorts of bruise marks all over his back. This is a recaption of what happened in Tony's dream. So Tony would go to sleep one night, and as Tony is sleeping, he'll keep witnessing this guy's face just pop up in his dream, and all he could keep thinking about was the murder, the murder, the murder. He kept getting vivid memories of the guy getting stabbed as the knife just driving through him, and he could see the guy, that innocent guy that got stabbed up, face as it was in shock, and he was surprised. But that wasn't the catch of it. For some reason, the dream every night got realer and realer and realer, until one day he had a dream and it was actually reconstructed the same exact story of the guy killing him. But this round, the guy didn't run past James and run past Tony. This round, the guy will actually stop. He would run past just a little bit. He would stop and turn around and actually look for Tony and them. So now at this point, the dream feels real to Tony. Tony's sleeping, and he's not noticing that he's sleeping. He thinks he's wide awoke. He thinks the same thing that happened before is happening again. But this round, the guy was actually looking for them. And eventually, as the guy was walking around, and he would go building to building, and he would start walking through paths and stuff, and it was this big metal green container thing surrounded with bushes, and Tony and James was actually hiding inside of that thing. But for some reason, when the guy turned, just that little split in the bush, he caught eye contact with Tony, and Tony caught eye contact directly back with him. And at that point, this guy starts sprinting, and he's running so fast, and he's gaining on him. And as James and Tony gets out of the bush, and they decide they want to start running across the street. Now, mind you, their house is only less than a half a mile away, so he's sprinting at full speed, Tony and James. But for some reason, this dream took a turn for the worse. Only in this dream, Tony could not run fast. For some reason, James will keep speeding. He's running at regular speed as if we running in real life, but Tony could not. The dream caused him somewhere along the line to get a hiccup, and Tony was actually moving in slow motion. So as James was gaining on him, and James saying, come on, Tony, you can run faster, you can run faster. Tony is looking back and saying, I can't. Now, mind you, this guy is gaining on him rapidly fast as he's running down, and he has a book bag in his hand. But what he didn't know, what Tony didn't know, is that this guy was actually going to catch up to him, and this book bag had a lot of weight. You could tell from the way that the guy was running with it. But Tony was steady trying, and at this point now, James has made it to the front door, and his parents open the front door, and his parents is yelling, and his brothers and them stand out there yelling. They saying, Tony, please, come on, you can make it. But after a while, they can see the distance going, and they look like Tony's running in slow motion. They can see that Tony's running in slow motion, but no one understands the dream why Tony is moving as slow as he was. But eventually, the guy will catch up, and there's nothing that no one can do. They could just stand in the door, and they will watch as this guy gets up to Tony and catches up and takes that bag and just start brutally hitting him. Tony would fall to the ground, and then the guy would just keep pounding away on his back. Boom, 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 over and over and over, until you can start seeing blood come out from beside underneath Tony, a 7-year-old boy at the time. And before you know it, the guys closed the door, the police came, authorities show up and stuff, and then boom, he woke up. Now there's a lot of questions that's raised behind this dream, because when Tony woke up, not only was Tony beyond sore, his legs were sore, his feet were sore as if he really had been running, but that contradicts itself because his parents said he was sound asleep. But when he went to go take a shower and he took his shirt stuff off and he looked in the mirror, on his back was layered with wound marks. And all these marks would symbolize the exact same thing that happened to him in his dream was happening to him in real life. Because all of the marks on his back lined exactly with the book bag markings that the dude was hitting him with a bag of rocks. Here's the photos, his back and his attacker. So if you guys actually like what you just heard, there's a lot of unsolved questions behind this. Please drop a comment and give me your best thought as to what happened, and how did the stuff in his dream transfer and the markings that end up on his body in real life. Please drop a comment. We are all waiting for him. Whoever has the best comment or the most knowledgeable comment that will make sense as to what happened, you'll get pinned at the top. Other than that, turn on your notifications. And that's going to do it for the first episode of Vivid Dreams. See ya.